All right, so here we go. We are at the City Council Workshop of May 9th, 2023. I'd like to call this workshop to order at 5:33 p.m. Roll call, please.
Councilmember White,
Here.
Councilmember Voigt,
Here.
Councilmember Laura,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn,
Here.
Mayor Martinez.
Here. So please stand for the pledge. Right hand over your heart, please. Ready, begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do we have anything to report for conflicts of interest or adjustments? All right, so item B is public comment period. Do we have public comments today?
I have no written requests. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
All right, seeing none, that takes us to item C, action items. They were on C1, the fiscal year 23-24 citywide budget. Presentation today by Ms. Eustachian.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. What we have for you is the continuation of our discussion for the fiscal year 23-24 budget. As you all know, we had our first workshop on April 27th, but due to some time constraints, we weren't able to finish that presentation. So this evening, we're going to go ahead and finish where we left off, do a little bit of recap, and then continue on from where we were at. Let's see. So we're going to go over the general fund overview and highlights, so one-time fund discussion, wastewater fund overview, wastewater enhancement requests, all funds, and the internal service funds. So for the general fund overview, we had revenues proposed at $67.45 million, expenditures at $51.75 million, with a remaining balance of $15.7. We had total department enhancement requests at $4.2 million and capital requests at $4.2 million. So I do want to note that in that capital request, there was an additional project of overflow parking lighting at the CRC for $224,000, and that was in addition to what you saw at the last budget workshop. That leaves an unprogrammed balance of $7.3 million. And that also includes, in the enhancement request, 18.5 new full-time equivalent positions. And I'm going to have Tara come up and kind of discuss what you were handed this evening as far as the attachments go. So can you do that, please?
I gotta go way up on this. Good evening, Mayor and council members. So the first sheet is the attachment numbering cheat sheet, we called it. If you have your workbook, program or attachment A, program cost is gonna be the same, so then there's not an attachment here. All I attached was anything that changed. Attachment B stays the same at general fund revenue comparisons. Attachment C stays the same as general fund expenditure comparisons. Those are all in the book. Attachment D was a combo in the book of wastewater and general fund. So the general fund didn't change, and so your first attachment here would be attachment E, and it's just the wastewater personnel and operating enhancements. I decided to pull that out so you didn't have to search for page 2 in your book because we called it attachment E. And that didn't change from last meeting. The old attachment E, summary enhancement request, is now attachment F. So that's attached. And I heard you guys loud and clear last meeting that you wanted the one-time costs of the positions pulled out. So I refactored this, and the one-time costs are anything that is not a personnel salary or benefit related. So the bottom numbers on page 2 did not change, but the columns changed so that you can see what's one time and what's ongoing for personnel.
What attachment?
Attachment F. It'd be the third one in the grouping. It looks like this with the peach. Yep. And then we have a new attachment G, which is the CIP vehicle and equipment detail list. This was something else you asked for last time. So basically, and that's this one, sorry, it's probably hard to read, but it gets better after this one. This is any position that had a vehicle tied to it. I've listed the vehicle next to the position. If it doesn't have a vehicle, it says no vehicle requested. So this is in the top section, you can see which positions are asking for a vehicle that are in the CIP. The exception would be the school resource officer. Their vehicle was actually on the enhancement sheet, which is why they're at $52,715, but that's not in the CIP, it's on the enhancement sheet. So we'll do a little switching of that. And then down below are the CIP requests that are in the CIP, which is what makes the vehicles and what makes the equipment. On our last slideshow, we had just one line for what's the vehicles and what was equipment in the slideshow, and you asked for a breakout, and so this is the breakout. And it all ties to our next attachment J, which is the CIP. Highlighted in yellow is what Jennifer mentioned, the newly added overflow parking. And you can't read it, but if you take the long one and unfold it, then you can read it. So I gave you guys something you could read. This is just exactly the same, but you can actually see what it says. But I gave you the small one, so if you wanted to put it in your book for memorialization, you can. And then the last attachment, oh, well, let me go back to, so then F, the old attachment F, wastewater comparison schedule, is the new attachment H, but nothing changed. So I didn't print that. Oh, I skipped. And then the CIP was H, now it's J. And then the brand new one, attachment K, the strategic planning priority level funding, is the very last one with green. And that goes over our 3 priority level 1, 2, and 3 goals, each of the 10. Underneath those, what's currently funded, what's proposed to be funded, and whether it's fully or partially funded. So that gives you an idea of where we're at. Any questions on the attachments? Okay.
I just wanted her to go over that too, because what we had discussed, there was a couple of requests, and like she had mentioned, you wanted to see some more details. So when we added those attachments in, it kind of changed what we had in your binder. So we decided to go ahead and go over that real quick, so that way if you're putting in your binders, you know what's replacing what.
So G for the fund summaries is still G. Is that correct? Do you have G
Fund
for?
summaries are I now.
G is,
Okay.
right.
Correct. All right, so G went
So
to
there,
I.
something jumped in, a new E, right? Wastewater details
Yes.
was
Right.
now an E.
And that bumped everything down, and then there's a new G.
Right.
And then K.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm good now.
Apologies for the confusion.
Anyone have questions on that? I'm sure more will come up. Okay. Continue.
So at the end of everything, we have 7.3 million remaining resources in the general fund. So what we're looking for is to have discussion on the recommended uses for the 7.3. One-time expenditure options would be best, as ongoing costs have not been programmed into the long-term financial forecast, which was reviewed at the first budget workshop. So one-time expenditures, which could be anything that's off of your strategic plan priority goals, a suggestion, that attachment K that you received, or the CalPERS pension liability, or another option is to leave in the fund balance, so kind of like leave for a rainy day. As you notice with your attachment K for the strategic plan priority goals, the last column has a P for any items that are partially funded. And kind of while you're looking over that, I can kind of talk about where we're going with this CalPERS pension liability. So in our fiscal year 22 audit, the CalPERS liability went down to about 9.6 million. That was, and we were at our target goal, so council's target goal is 85% funded. But that was a little optimistic. So CalPERS had in fiscal year '21, they had a 21% investment return, which triggered their risk mitigation policy. And what that means is in a year that they have excessively good returns, they reduce their discount rate, assuming that the returns are not going to be so good in the future. So that happened, and as they reduced the discount rate, and they also have projected negative returns in fiscal year '23. With that, now we're estimating that the unfunded balance is about 75%, or roughly between $16 to $18 million. So those differences that CalPERS is doing each year, your liability went down, it has since increased. Pensions, or the city council decided that their target rate was to be 85% funded. We're estimating now we're going to be about 73 to 75%. So the discussion is does council want to use some of these one-time funds to make an additional discretionary payment to CalPERS? And you can do that, and what that'll do is if you can choose if you want to pay your short-term or long-term basis, and it will provide you savings in the long run. We ran a scenario, looked at what we would pay off, where would it be, and if you did a long-term basis of $9 million, because that's what it would take to get to the 85%, it would save you about 1.5. Now, I know we're discussing $9 million is more than 7.3, so council can decide if they would want to put any of this one-time dollars towards that liability. And so with that, I'm going to stop there for any questions.
I didn't have them.
Oh, okay, so Councilman Lara.
Thanks. So one more time. So for PERS, the discount rate went down,
Correct.
and then we're paying more then.
Yeah, so what they do is they provide us, assuming that we have our funded level that they have calculated based on our amount of employees, retirees, they give us an amount. They give us a discount rate, assuming that they're going to have investment returns to offset that dollar balance. And since they've decreased that, that means they're not giving us as much of a discount against what we owe because, well, of their policy, they've reduced it.
Of course.
So, which then increases our liability.
So, and this may be a stupid question, but to pay more and then have the rate get readjusted again the following year really wouldn't make, I mean, it's like you're chasing your tail, isn't it?
It's a moving target, absolutely, it really is.
That's one way to
'Cause
put it.
Each year, each year they add to their amortization schedule depending on how well they have gauged their investment returns. So they're giving us a 6.8 discount rate, but they are estimating that they're probably going to come in between 4.5% to 5%. So they're not, so you're going to have a negative amortization again level,
Right.
and it's just always kind of continuous as they add for it year by year. So
Good work.
even though it is a moving target, if you do put some additional discretionary payment towards it, you're still reducing your overall amount.
Okay. Thank you for doing that again for me. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
No? Okay, continue, because I know we need to get to the other funds too.
Okay. Okay.
Excuse me. Are we going to be coming back to this now? Okay.
So, Mayor, the plan is to briefly talk about the general fund, and then get into the restricted funds that we didn't cover, and then we're gonna turn it over to you and answer any questions that you have.
Okay, so now we'll move on to wastewater. So for their fiscal year '24 proposed budget, we have 13.4 million of budgeted revenues, expenses of a little over 13 million for a surplus of $377,859. The revenues have increased by $374,000, which is 2.8% from fiscal year '23 budget, and the expenses have increased by $293,000, or 2.3% from fiscal year '23 adjusted budget. I do want to mention that we are currently in a rate study, so we have not factored in any type of increase or anything like that. We've left the revenues level, so this is only on any growth from maybe new connections to the sewer system. And so this gives you a view.
Yeah,
Another quick
it's a workshop, so if we want to jump in.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so the rate study is going to be, are we going to have made, is that going to be completed and we have made a decision on what we want to do on rates before we approve a budget this year?
We have not yet, so since it's not going to be ready, most likely we will not be able to, even if we decided to increase rates, it would not be ready in time for the July 1st
We're not
for
going to make the
budget.
July 1st.
Okay, and
deadline.
just, pardon me if this was discussed in detail last time. If we come out of here with no new direction, we're good with where you're going, can you give me a timeline on when we approve the budget next?
June 6th.
Okay, so nothing will come, if we walk out of here and we're good, then nothing will happen between now and June 6th. You'll bring us a completed budget.
Correct. However, I do want to mention that May 16th, you will see the sewer rate study again. We're just
Okay,
not
but
going to
we
make
won't
the
put
July
it into the
1st.
budget.
Yeah, because we won't make the July 1st.
And if we have more changes and discussions that we want after tonight, we will have another workshop before we approve the budget?
We can have another workshop, or we can talk about it on June 6th, and we still have June 20th to adopt.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this slide is just reviewing from your fiscal year 22 actual revenues to your fiscal year 23 estimated revenues, and then to your fiscal year 24 proposed. And again, the increase from the fiscal year 23 estimated to the fiscal year 24 proposed is the additional growth that's expected from new connections. Okay, so this chart, this is getting to expenses, and this chart shows the different categories of expenses within the wastewater fund. Personnel has decreased from fiscal year 23 estimates to fiscal year 24 proposed budget due to the removal of a portion of public works positions that were charged to the wastewater fund. The chief plant operator position was also unfunded in the fiscal year 24 budget. And I'm going to skip over operating for a second and discuss capital, which has decreased for fiscal year 24 for the budget due to vehicle purchases in fiscal year 23 that were not needed in fiscal year 24. Operating has increased. That's with a change of accounting for the admin overhead charge. Fiscal year 23, it was in transfers out. Our auditors gave us this change. So you will notice that there is a decrease in transfers out, and then it is then being placed into the operating. Transfers out in fiscal year 23 also include a $1 million reserve for repair and replace fund. So when reducing that repair and replace and the admin overhead, the transfer out actually decreased $482,000 or 8.69%, and that's due to some funding of capital projects in fiscal year 23.
Mayor?
Yeah, jump in.
So, when I look at operating costs in the binder, I've got 4 million, or for 22-23, I've got 4,055,585. Here it shows 3,078,744, or 785,744.
That could have been the way it was categorized, or, because from the Encode report, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
Yeah, whatever the, let's see, I'm sorry. Was it, F, maybe, or, yeah. Attached, what, I don't know, it used to be F. I don't know what it is now.
So it's under section, this section, but
Yeah.
what she's asking you?
Yes, sorry, section 8.
The Encode report, Councilmember?
Yes,
Okay.
that's
Oh,
it,
yes,
sorry.
yes, yes.
And what is your question?
So you look at, on the 2 of 3, you look at total budget for operating costs for 22-23. I've got 4,055,585. Here it shows total operating for 23 at, estimated at 3 million. 3,785,000. On the,
Oh, it's because it's estimated. For 23, we're doing estimated, not budget dollars. So we've included what our estimated actuals are going to be for 23. So
So
you're
would that have been-
comparing, so on the report, it's comparing, you're looking at the budget column.
Which is gonna be different than the total activity.
Correct.
Right? Okay,
Correct.
all right, I'm with you now. Thank you.
Correct.
Sorry.
No, no problem. Are there any other questions with this? Okay.
I do have a question. I don't know if you meant by that one section, but can you go back? And I'm sure you mentioned it, but I didn't catch it. Why the proposed 2024 for personnel is lower than the estimated for '23?
Sure. So there were some positions that were partially funded. They were public works positions, and they were partially funded by wastewater. Wastewater will no longer be funding a portion of those positions. And then also the chief plant operator position was unfunded for fiscal year '24.
Okay, thank you.
And for wastewater operating enhancement requests, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Thaxton. He's going to go over those.
So picking up right where we left off, that's the explanation for the new position is to take those dollars that we're funding public works positions and bring on a dedicated wastewater principal engineer. This also frees up the public works engineers, to work more on towards the rest of the strategic goals. Next item is the office and yard space on 4th and Veely. That is our proportion by square footage for the number of personnel and equipment that would be at that site. And then the third item is to procure emergency lighting for our spill response trailer. We own none at this time. And if something does happen in the middle of the night, that's also when nothing's open to go rent or, obtain that kind of equipment. So those are the enhancement items.
So those are attachment E in tonight's packet. This one. It's section 8 in the binder, and then the packet that you were given tonight, it's attachment E. Oh. It was broken out, correct, Tara? Yeah, so at council's request, we broke it out for tonight. I know.
No.
So we're on E. You
I
have
know
us,
where it is. I'm
you
just
have us
saying,
pull out the E right now that we're on.
Correct.
Okay, so let's go with that.
Maybe we can refer to sections at this point, because none of us have been able to throw in a section 5B to get caught up here. You know what I'm saying? So when you talk about the items, if you can just refer to section and then tell us the
That might work.
attachment on here.
Okay,
Attachment here, section here.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that might work. Okay. So we're on E, section 8. Well, that's right. Okay. All right, I got it.
Okay.
Mayor, I just have one question on this.
Go.
Are these included in the fiscal year '24 proposals that are on the graph that we were seeing on that slideshow?
The no, enhancements are not
enhancements?
included.
They are not
No.
in the proposed.
No.
Okay, thank you.
So this is for discussion. Were there, do you have any questions for Thaxton on any of these enhancements, at least for the operating portion?
So these are not in the graph.
They're not in the graph.
So if you take what's in the graph and you add the proposed numbers here, do you get back to where we were last year?
Well, we'll move forward if you don't mind, and we can go over all that.
Okay, sure.
So this is just the organizational chart of how it looks. If,
On the screen.
So, I do have a question one more time, maybe you mentioned it, for the office space one more time. So is that the building that we're moving everybody into?
Correct.
Correct.
All right. And as a part of that whole thing that you gave us a number on, this is their portion?
Correct,
Is that
by
what that
square
is?
footage.
Okay,
Right,
so it's not
right.
an additional to that number, it's a part of that number?
It's a part of it.
Okay, that's all. Okey-doke.
I gotta admit, Copernicus's budget was a lot easier to follow. It was a-
The one page?
There, in the middle?
Well, it was only 14 pages.
Well, it was one page.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
That sounds like tacos are.
I will
on
say,
you after
lessons
that
learned, and
comment.
next year, if there's additional requests, we'll make sure we
Oh.
just put them at the end.
Wow. Whew, okay, go ahead. Tacos on you, okay.
Can you go back to the org chart?
Sure.
So this is the proposed organizational chart for the wastewater treatment plant. The green position is the new position. I just want to highlight that that is part of the enhancements. It's not in the graph that you saw before. However, it is offset because the general fund was partly funding functions of the wastewater treatment plant. For example, you have a position that is assigned to Public Works that's funded currently 50/50, and so that was removed, and it's being used to fund the principal engineer. Your city engineer, Public Works director was 25%, wastewater, et cetera.
So we should see the adjustment on the other end for that, right? If we're taking away that and funding it
You'll see
all
the
here, then
adjustment on the
there's so
general
much-
fund side, correct.
Okay.
So,
So that leaves us, if we were to include those enhancements we just discussed, wastewater would have $99,681 remaining of available resources. Capital project requests are $280,440. And so the capital projects that were rated as high priority are a core screen retrofit for $50,000 and a Rover X mainline inspection system for $230,440. So that leaves a balance of a little over $180,000 of unfunded capital projects.
So the Rover X mainline inspection system, is that the camera system to inspect the condition of the lines?
Yeah, that just happens to be the brand name, but yeah, it's a CCTV camera system,
So
truck van, yeah.
this is just, and this is obviously a one-time purchase, correct? Do we need to hire anybody to operate the camera, or does it just operate it with staff we have on hand?
We would initially do it with staff on hand. Our original, before we cut everything from the budget, when we saw where we stand, we did propose bringing on a dedicated staff member to do it.
Okay, so, and if I'm getting too deep, if I need to come, we need to come back. So, is this something that, how often would we be inspecting lines? I know that we've got to go through every line, right, and then kind of rate them as far as to see which ones we need to repair sooner rather than later, and which ones can be put off, right? So is this like a year-long process? And the reason, what I'm getting at, is this something that could be contracted out this time, and at such time where we can get our wastewater budget squared away, pick up the camera at that time. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but,
Oh, it absolutely makes sense. We looked at that angle.
Okay.
In the department. We got a quote to do the entire system, and it came in at $861,000.
so maybe the camera is not a bad idea.
I'd recommend it,
Okay, all right.
because we'd own it, and then you get all the peripheral benefits of it. We can use it anytime. That is just for this, going through the system, not emergency responses,
Right.
not, hey, the street.
Okay, well, it's good to know what the option was as far as the contract goes, so thank you for sharing that. That's all I have.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, sorry, I'm having a bad day. So one more time then, we're, what do you plan to go after this? Are we gonna be discussing everything all together, so we can go back and talk about, general fund and this? Or do you wanna kind of talk about this and finalize this before we go back? Or what's our direction?
We still have other funds too to kind
Yeah,
of go
yeah,
forward with
I know
on.
we have
Yeah,
other-
so it's, I mean, however you would like to direct it, I can continue on and we can get through all of
So we can just take all
it.
the unrestricted together, or restricted all together?
And then we can
and
go
the-
back to, okay.
Can I make a suggestion? So if I'm reading this right, we're $180,759 short of what we need to complete the capital project request, correct?
That's correct. And
if
I'm gonna go,
we- If we as a group up here tell you we're good with taking that from the one-time money, we can do that? Okay, because I thought we saw the first slide was one-time money,
for the general fund.
general fund, okay.
Right, right.
Okay.
So if it's okay, move to the next slide. A balanced budget provides that revenues meet or exceed expenses. So you can do plan drawdown of available resources, meaning fund balance, to balance your budget. And that's considered balancing the budget is okay. So the city's ending fund balance policy is that fund balance reserve requirement is minimum of 25% of the enterprise annual operating expense. So city council can elect to use fund balance and is appropriate on one-time projects. Of course, just keeping in mind avoidance of needing to use fund balance in the future. So you wouldn't want to add positions or anything like that against that. Since the vehicle is a one-time purchase, that would be completely appropriate. So what we've done in the slide is we've done an estimated ending fund balance of $5.2 million. Your unfunded capital projects of $181,000 would give you a remaining fund balance of $5 million. So when you calculate that out for your proposed budget expenditures or expenses, you'd still be at 37.3% of fund balance, and your policy is 25%.
What's the difference between the dollar amount between 25% and the 37.3%?
For dollar amount?
Yeah.
Well, let me see, that would, I think it's 1.6 million.
So I'm thinking ahead, but would we be able to use that to lower the rate increases that we're going to be looking at? Can you use that money that way?
So in the model that they do in the wastewater rate study, they include your cash balance reserves when they're modeling out what they need for revenue requirement.
They're
So
cute.
that's already been,
The whole 37% then, in this case?
correct. So this would reduce it by the 181,000, which overall, I don't think would have an impact on the rates.
Okay, thank you.
Funds.
Okay, so now we'll get into all the other cities' funds. So the city has special revenue funds that support operations. You have your general fund contains most of your city operations, but there are special revenues that come in that can be used by the general fund. They actually transfer in to help support those operations. You have gas tax that comes in, and it's transferred into the general fund to support your streets program. And CFD, so that comes in for public services, also administration, and those are transferred into the general fund as well. So in this chart, we've provided the different special revenue funds that help support the general fund, and we've listed them all out. So you have your gas tax, your grants fund, your COPS are also known as LESA fund, You have the other special revenue fund, which is donations mostly coming in to support your K-9 program. And your different CFD, you have your CFD admin, CFD maintenance services, and your CFD public safety. And each of these dollar amounts are the amount which includes your transfer into the general fund to help support those operations. Do we have any questions on these? Okay. We also have special revenue funds, and those special revenue funds are used to support capital improvements within the city. And those different funding sources are SB1, Measure A, CDBG, CFD, and SLFRF, also known as ARPA funds. And so this slide goes over the different special revenues that are used for capital improvements within the city. So you have your SB1 and your Measure A and CDBG funds. Those are all being used for your annual citywide street rehab and maintenance project. Your SLFRF, that's also ARPA funds, is being used for the Mesa Lift Station construction, and CFD funds for the other items that are listed, the police station, dog park, sport park facility, and some CRC improvements.
That Measure A is after our payments to WRCOG.
Yes, yes. So
Okay.
the revenue we receive from them is after their cut.
Okay.
Right. Do we have any other questions? Okay.
Can you go back to $1 million for the Palmer Dog Park? Is that something we've already approved, something I missed in the last meeting?
That was the discussion when the lady from Nicholas Park came and talked about the dog park condition at Nicholas Park and what poor shape it was in. And we talked about moving it to a more manageable park, Palmer Park. It's about $1 million to recreate it from scratch. So there's no dog park there now. So we would have to, we're gonna shut down the Nicholas Dog Park.
Okay.
And repurpose that into a sports field or something, and then actually relocate the dog park.
Okay. I didn't miss anything. I mean, I remember talking about when the citizen came in,
Yeah.
but you haven't told us of that plan yet. Have you, did we talk?
No,
about that?
it hasn't been presented formally to council.
Got it. Okay.
We don't even have conceptuals yet.
Okay.
And then we also have development impact fees, and those development impact fees are to support capital improvements for expansion projects. And so the different capital or the development impact fees funds that we're going to be using for projects would be your traffic signal mitigation, road and bridge mitigation, police facilities mitigation, and your wastewater mitigation funds. And so the different projects that are funded by each of your development impact fees within the fiscal year 24 proposed budget is road and bridge mitigation, and that's for 2nd Street extension construction and Pennsylvania widening. You have traffic signal mitigation, which is for your citywide traffic signal upgrade and capacity improvements. And Potrero interchange, that is actually WRCOG funding for $3.25 million. We have wastewater mitigation of 2.7, which includes, it's for the Mesa Force Main construction, and Mesa Lift Station construction, and your recycled water development impact fees, which is for a recycled water study. There's a formal name for that. Maybe Thexton can say what the name of that project is.
It's essentially the environmental for the adaptive management plan and the 1211 change petition.
It's because it's a part of one of the projects, and WRCOG is considered, we kind of place it with the development impact fees. It's not necessarily a development impact fee, but it's funding that we receive from WRCOG that is being used to go towards the Pochero project.
So that's money that we've already received, or your,
It's been, and maybe Jeff can talk about this funding a little bit.
and I apologize, but I'm gonna go down a deep rabbit hole on this one.
Yeah, so that's money that's in the approved pass area tip, so it'd be reimbursed. So as we incur expenses associated with the project, whether it's for design, which we're using a portion of it for now, and hopefully ultimately construction, it's reimbursable by WRCOG.
So we can spend that money and we should be reimbursed by WRCOG for that amount of money?
Yes.
Okay. So real quick, but how much money do we have on Potrero?
Total?
Yeah.
Well, we have 6.5, but we recently, on the RCTC call for projects,
Yeah,
were selected to
I'm getting
have
that
an additional $8 million. So there's a meeting on Thursday with the Public Works Committee for WRCOG to recommend approval of that. And then ultimately it goes to the executive board. So it was ranked second on the list for what we applied for, and it looks very promising, but it is not formally approved yet.
So that's conditional on us meeting the gap of 33 million.
Well, we would utilize that, right, we still have a significant funding deficiency for overall construction, right? And so,
That's the number I'm trying to get to.
right, and so I don't have the dates in front of me. I believe you have to have an invoice received by 2025. So, yes, that is contingent upon us being able to procure additional funding to be able to take that project off the ground.
And we have grants in the works, or we're waiting for approval on grants of how much?
So the 33.5 million is what we asked for, what's called a TSEP grant. So it was a Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. And I believe the date that we're supposed to hear is June 11th. So we should know within a month or so the outcomes of that grant.
And the best case on that would be 33 million.
Right, right.
And is there, could we receive partial?
For the TSEP,
Yeah.
it's possible. It's unlikely, but it is possible that we could receive a lower amount, and then we would still have to look for additional funding.
So if we were to get 33, then we don't need the 8 million from RCTC?
No, the 33, so the match requirement on the Potrero, or on the TSEP grant's 25%. So between the money that we have in the pass zone tip, which is the 6.5 that you see here, and the additional 8 for the call for projects, we would beat our local match.
So our local match would be about 14, 15 million,
For this grant, yes.
but we wouldn't get 33 million on the grant. We'd get the difference. Is that what you're saying?
No, we would get 33. The total amount would be about 47.
So what do we do with the other 14 million that we don't need if we get to 47?
No, it goes towards a project. 33 million would be funded by the TSEP grant if we were fortunate enough to get it, and the other 14 would come locally for a total
What do we
project
need
cost.
to finish phase 2?
What do we need to do as far as
Money.
money-wise? Probably right around 40. So we're not, we don't have a revised engineer's estimate yet. We will soon. And then costs have obviously been all over the map, what we've seen for several projects that we have, but it looks like around low 40s.
And we will know about the grant before June 16th when we finalize the budget.
Well, they are, yeah,
June what?
June 6th
June 6th.
or June 20th.
right. So the date that it's supposed to be released, the results, is June 11th, but these are not hard dates, right? So sometimes with these SB1 or other grants, things get delayed, and so it could push out further. But that is what it was originally slated, yeah, it was June 11th.
Okay, and again, I know I'm getting out, but I got to get this all in my mind here. We still had 6 million that we didn't program last year, right, about? And what are our reserves this year? And is that going to be like your last slide?
No, but I have it for you. So I've calculated estimated ending reserve. So these are just estimated for the end of this fiscal year. And it's going to be about, it's at 42%, which is about 28.8. When you take out our policy, which is the 16%, operating or cash flow reserve, your 5 million budget stabilization, and 1 million emergency reserve. It's an available estimated about 12 million.
Okay, so where I'm going with this is I'd like to know, when we finally approve the budget, whether we can start Potrero this year. And if it means we have to use some of the 6 million elsewhere, of course, I'm just brainstorming, I'm not voting for you guys, but, if we can start Potrero, I would like to know, as soon as you guys know, whether or not we can put it into this budget to get it started.
And when do we expect design?
Design, we would be looking to bury the end of this year or probably very early next year. So, we modified the ramps to alleviate the direct on ramps, and so we'll have to do and you'll see that probably in the next few months, is we'll have to do a revision to not only amend the plans so that it's reflective of the elimination of those ramps, but obviously Caltrans has changed their standards yet once again, so they have to be brought up to that standard. They were never formally signed, at least the phase 2 component, so they were brought up right to a near approval stage, and for this exact reason is if, once they go approved, there's a shelf life, so, but we're targeting probably very beginning of next calendar year for a completely ready to advertise project.
Okay. Thank you, I appreciate you guys.
Very good. All right. None of those grants.
We'll need to clarify that.
None of those grants are pulled back, or we don't need the matches. If that is.
Okay.
So the
You may bring it up right now.
25 is what you're saying, okay. Well, and that was where I was going with that. We're still on council, we're good. No, I was concerned about with one of the grants, if it was one of those, if we can't meet it, then to take it back. And
Is the TSA?
no,
No,
I don't
use it
think
or
it was
lose
that
it?
one, I think it was,
It's the timeframe more than,
right, so,
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
Yeah, certainly, just like our CTZ money, right, or the others, is if you have a certain amount of time from the awarding of the grant before you encumber the grant, and then an X duration, obviously, to where you have to expend the grant. So I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it's up to 2026 even before we can encumber that, and then the completion is a few years later. So we would be looking for completion so that you don't jeopardize any funds by 2028. I can certainly double check on that, I don't have it with me, but yes.
But we can use, I'm sorry, we can use the 8 million for a portion of the local match, right?
Yes,
Or
absolutely.
16.
You're right. Right, that was the intent.
That was the intent, okay. Right. That clarified, thank you, I missed that little piece. Okay, we're still going on it, right? There's still more on this slide?
Oh, no, are you, any more questions, or I can continue?
No, just go ahead and continue, I think.
So we have a Fund 562 road and bridge mitigation, but we don't yet have the idea of a road and bridge district, correct? Okay.
Well, go ahead, I'll bring my question, I'll write it down for later. All right, go ahead.
Okay. So we're going to move on to internal service funds. And this is the last section, I promise.
Okay.
So we have 4 different categories for your internal service funds that consists of facility maintenance fund, a vehicle replacement fund, information technology fund, and equipment replacement fund. And the use of these funds is to kind of keep up on the city's deferred maintenance, so that way we are keeping up on our capital items and our facilities. And we have a depreciation schedules that are built in to determine useful lives of these items, contributions that come in from the different departments, from the general fund into the internal service funds, and then how we use those funds or program them each year to cover these costs. And so we've listed the contributions to the internal service fund from the departments, and you have your facility maintenance, about $465,000, IT equipment replacement about $373,000, vehicle replacement of $659,000, and equipment replacement of $228,000. So those are annual contributions. They adjust based on the different determinants for either useful life or replacement schedule that are created for these funds. And then the expenditures, you have facility maintenance at 2.9, IT equipment replacement at $402,000, vehicle replacement at 1.2, and equipment replacement at $308,000. And I'll stop here for any questions on the internal service funds.
I'm on the definition, if you would. I kind of lost a little bit of that. So it says allows the city to address capital needs on a useful life schedule. One more time, how you explain that?
So, like for vehicle replacement, so we have so many vehicles that are in our fleet, and we know that they only have a useful life of, maybe 5 to 10 years. So depending on the type of vehicle it is, we have that useful life in a schedule when we know it needs replaced. So depending on the different departments and how many vehicles they have, they contribute to the fund on an annual basis so that they're able to make those replacements when they come due.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Continue.
Mayor, it helps so it doesn't hit their operating budget when the time comes.
This is kind of like paying ahead.
Correct.
Correct.
All right. Where are we at next? Oh, okay. We're there already.
So basically, we'll take any questions you have on the fiscal year '24 proposed budget. Staff is seeking any direction from council, one being the use of those one-time funds in the general fund, the use of wastewater reserves for that capital project request, and then if you're looking to make any changes in what we've proposed so far.
Okay.
Would it be helpful if we spent a little bit more time on what was presented previously?
So, do we remember what happened last workshop, or do we want to kind of a review? Or do we think we're formulated to go ahead and start asking that? That's what we're asking. So if we need a refresher course, we can do that. Or if we have stuff already formulated for questions, we can just jump in. It's just, I don't want to, take that time if we're already focused on what we're going to ask, but, that's up to council. Where are we at, 6:30? So I'm good without a review myself. How about you? You good? We're good? Okay, so I think we're probably ready just to jump in with a few things. So let me ask a couple of things for clarity and so forth. So this, like this fund account 562 and stuff for the mitigation for road and bridge repair. So I'd always talked about a placeholder in the past, and I'm referring to Pennsylvania because that's, again, community's loudest concern. So I've always in the past, said, and I mentioned this in the last meeting, if we have some extra money, let's keep kind of throwing a little bit into this Pennsylvania fund for our upcoming separation and stuff. So when we do have matching needs and stuff, we've got some money there, and it shows the public that we mean business and we're working towards that. So how does that look in the budget? Because, we have a CIP project list and we already have a category there. So if we decide that we want to put a few dollars into that, how would we list that? Would we have to go back and adjust the CIP? Or can we just add to a fund that's there? Or can we create a fund for just Pennsylvania future? I don't understand how that works.
You can earmark it if you want to, and the place where you'd be able to do that is a general fund. You wouldn't want to do that in your development impact fee funds because there's a time limit on those dollars.
Okay.
So you have to have them identified when you're going to spend it in 3 years and fully spent by 5 years.
Okay, so
So-
you wouldn't recommend general fund money for that revenue?
You could use the one-time funds in general fund and put aside money if you wanted to for
Does that
whatever
have a-
project it
does
is,
that
you
have
could
an
do that.
expiration on that?
No.
Okay. All right. And then, okay, so that's possible. I'm not interested in increasing our, putting towards the PERS liability. That's just my opinion on that.
No.
So just, I wanted to throw that out ahead of time. Because we're looking at whether we want to approve what they have or adjust or move some money around. According to this K, these P here are the partially funded parts of our goals, correct? So we don't have numbers here, but I guess we could ask for numbers. So if we're asking for, let's say, Pennsylvania grade separation, like I've asked before, number 5, where it's partially funded, we can maybe talk about a number there. And like you said earlier, decide how we're gonna put that in or earmark it or however. All right. Okay, so that's all I had to do for clarity.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea to just, you could update the CIP. So if you decided to put to Pennsylvania grade separation, say the $7 million, we could include that, update the CIP, include that, and put the funds in there.
Okay.
If you don't spend those dollars, you could always put them back.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for, a way that we have that little option, without having to go through a whole process and so forth. Okay.
Right.
All right, what do we have over here? Oh, lights are coming on now, huh? Mayor Pro Tem, I'm gonna let him go first.
I'll be short. So I would agree not putting extra money into the unfunded liability. That just seems like a black hole right now for me. But what I do wanted to jump over to is the wastewater with the restricted funds. I would recommend that we follow staff's guidance on that and then pull that out of the reserves to pay for that camera truck system, whatever it's called. That'd be my suggestion on that. So then perhaps maybe we can take care of the restricted funds with the wastewater, because that might be just a simple decision with the board, and then we can move on to the other stuff.
Well, I see what you're saying, you're trying to break it down into
Yeah,
pieces.
knock that one out, because I think that,
I'll go for that, but
On,
are you okay discussing pieces so we're not all over the place?
Yeah, I am,
Yeah.
but that's where I was going with that when we started asking that. But then I thought, my understanding from the next slide you showed me is that you've already calculated and figured it into the overall budget. And if we approve the overall budget, we don't need to go we don't need to address that one specifically, correct? Is that it? Or do you need from us?
Direction if you wanted to use fund balance dollars to make up that difference.
180,000 and some change. So we would need direction tonight to bring it back at the public hearing.
Yeah, I think we're all good with that, right?
I'm good. Are you good?
Mike?
Now, do you
Yeah,
have any
the-
others, I'm sorry,
no, go ahead.
do you have any other smaller funds we can address right now?
You have a comment on the 180?
Well, I'm good with that. I think it makes sense. I want to make sure, though, that we have the bodies to operate the camera, because I don't want to have a camera that we're not obviously using. The other concern I have, though, is once we've made the decision on the wastewater, we move forward to spend, was it that, 12 million, roughly, right?
7.3?
We have what? Well, we have 12 million left, and,
Before you talk about the general fund?
Are you
Yeah.
general?
Oh, yeah.
because we're going to pull 7 out of the general, right, for the Pennsylvania?
I still want to talk
Or
about that.
am I,
I think you're getting ahead, Mike.
Yeah.
well, okay, let me back up.
So what I threw out there
Erase that thought.
was
So,
one bite at a time with the wastewater.
but the
Wastewater.
concern that I have is that we had talked on wastewater, I'm still on wastewater, okay? That there was, when they gave us the presentation for the wastewater, we were looking at a $7 million loan in order to fund the capital improvements for wastewater.
Well, you're talking about the rate
The fee
study.
study, yeah, the fee
Talk
study.
rate, yeah, in the rate study, right?
We were
So
looking-
the concern that I have is that we have general fund money that we had talked about potentially loaning to the wastewater treatment plant. So I just want to make sure
Oh,
we kind of keep that in the
In
back of
mind.
our minds so we don't spend it and end up having to get a loan, right? Is that, am I okay? All right.
My recollection of that discussion was that we were going to consider lending money to the wastewater fund, but that has nothing to do with the enhanced projects that we're talking about, correct? I mean, I guess I should be asking you this, Mr. Lau, are you suggesting that our decision to loan or not to loan to lower the rates is contingent at all on this
No,
stuff here?
I apologize. I'm good. I support using the general fund to pay off this enhancement.
No, it would not be the general fund, the 180,000.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Right.
It's from
So
the
I'm saying
restricted
it's
So
fund.
different
for
value.
purposes of
Different.
tonight,
I got it.
we're not talking about using any general fund money for the wastewater.
So I think what Mike and I are going at, and I think the mayor's in the same boat, is let's get the little ones, let's get the things done so that at the end, we know we have a pot of money, and then we can start talking about whether that pot of money goes into Pennsylvania, whether, those other things. We've already all agreed that we don't want to put any more money into PERS, and we've agreed that this one makes sense. So are there any others, that's what I meant by smaller ones, are there any other ones that we can just address now and then know what our
Can I ask one question on this one, though? I'm sorry. Reserves on the wastewater treatment, right? We're talking about, there's that 37%. And we're gonna use a portion of that for the enhancements, right? Do I understand?
That's after the
Okay.
enhancement.
I'm good, thank you. Just wanna make sure I.
If you adopt this, the way it's presented, you'll still have 37.3%.
Okay,
And our policy is 25%.
Correct.
Correct.
So the difference of 12.3%, can we use that anyway? Can we use it
Sure.
in the rate study? Can we?
And it's been calculated in the models.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Jennifer, so to clarify that comment, the 37% is currently being calculated in that rate fee study?
Correct.
And that 37 is with this payment for the truck, or the camera?
Correct. So what they do when they do the models for the rate study is they have all of your recommended capital improvement
Oh,
plans.
gotcha.
They do a
Okay.
schedule.
So they've
And
already
so
covered
this
it.
truck has been included in that, as well as where your cash reserves are for wastewater
Okay.
at the time that they did the study.
Okay. So, Mr. Lardge, does that go?
I
for you?
am
Okay.
fine,
All
sure,
right,
thank
so we've
you.
got direction on that, so no PERS liability, and we're okay with the request of 187.59 for the wastewater, request. Okay, so is there anything else in restricted that you need, guidance on?
No, if everything you saw this evening was okay, then we would move forward with that to take to
So
budget
we're
adoption.
unrestricted only, everything's okay unrestricted? Yeah, unrestricted, okay, let's move over to general then. All right, so that takes us back to the general then. So for general, we're looking at 7.3. After the 4.2 enhancement requests have been taken out of the 15.7. So that is now where our discussion lies. So according to your slide, you're asking us to look at possible strategic goals on the attachment K. We already ruled out the CalPERS. We had an option of perhaps leaving some of the fund balance. So now the discussion to council is where do we want the 7.3 to go? All right, so, go ahead.
Sure.
Have your
So
light on.
I do support your idea of setting money aside for large projects like that.
And just to clarify, I'm not asking for that much. We haven't come up with a number.
Understand. But I think as far as in priorities go, I don't know if we've ever had this discussion before, and I think we can have it now. But I think finishing phase 2 of Potrero would have a much bigger impact on our traffic situations, and we're that close to being able to do it. I think it would change the traffic direction downtown, because you would have no trucks getting on or off and having to go through the downtown. We're at a point where we've got a lot of the funding, and maybe after the grant, we'll know that we're that much closer to doing it. And that just means then we can focus on our request for federal funding for the grade separation. So I'm not opposed to putting some in there. I'm just saying, in my opinion, the priority of the big projects is that Potrero is a higher priority project than the grade 7. I think the Potrero can be built, once we have the money, can be built, Jeff, I could be wrong on this, in a couple of years. If we had all the money to go, I mean, we're that close. In other words, we've got environmental, we've got design done next year.
Can I clarify one question real quick? So I think in order for us to get the 33.5 that we've requested from the grant, we have the match. So it's the 6.5 we currently have plus the 8, so the 14.5. Is there anything going to be jeopardized if we were to put more there? Would we potentially get less than the 33.5? I think my concern is right now in my head, the math is making sense that it's the 25% to get the rest of the TSUP grant. So I guess I'm concerned that if we add more to that we might not get this full 33.5.
No, one thing doesn't have anything to do with the other, so we would, by putting more into it. Now, like I say, if we're certainly successful with the awarding of the TSEP grant, putting extra money in it may not have the benefit that you're looking for, and if we're unsuccessful, it's certainly not gonna be enough to get us where we need to go. And so I think that 25% is a pretty healthy grant match, and so we're probably gonna be looking at that for any grant that we're going after, and some are maybe even a little bit less, but it's really the unknown, right? It's the unknown of where we're gonna end up, so.
But we will be a little less unknown by the time our
Yeah.
deadline of when we have to approve a budget for next year.
Right, yeah, absolutely. So right, so if we wrap up the plans, early next year, there's, the advertising and everything else, it's very reasonable to think we could have that encumbered, like the first half of next year, maybe even a little earlier.
So I guess the bottom line I'm asking you is, Potrero is a lot closer to being finished, assuming we get the funding, than a Great Step would be.
Right, it's further along certainly from an engineering perspective. Construction timeline's probably a little bit shorter. I think we're looking at, since the bridge is already existing, and it accelerated, maybe 18, but probably closer to 24 months. And the grade separation duration-wise is probably 30 to 36 months.
And we still have to get through the whole
We're
UP and Caltrans
Right.
and all of that.
Yes.
But we don't have those issues with Potrero, correct?
No, there's still some, final approvals that need to happen, but it's environmentally cleared, right-of-way's been acquired, engineering is largely complete, so from that perspective, yes, it's much more further along.
Plus, I think Potrero would also give us an escape route if we have another train crash.
And if we had that scenario again, then people could head west.
Yeah.
And then get on those bridges and get out of town, that way. Lloyd, I like where you're going with this.
So just remember, that's what you have to explain to the public. Anytime they ask, what are you doing about Pennsylvania? This is what you're gonna have to say. That we're focusing on Potrero because we think that's the better way to go. It's closer to being done, because the first thing I hear every single meeting is, what are you doing on Pennsylvania? And I always say, anytime that I see a little extra money, I put away there for a little bit,
But-
knowing that it's distant.
I think the other statement I would make at the end of that is, there's no grade separation that I know of that's been done less than 10 years.
Right, but to the public, what are they gonna respond? Well, you should have done that already, and they're right. So, what we do now is what the councils didn't do back then, and start planning now and put away now for that time when it gets here. So the more we miss putting stuff in, the more it's gonna come, and we're not ready, and we're exactly where we are now. So I'm only if you want a number from me, a couple $100,000, 500 grand is all I'm looking for. I'm not putting millions in there, because I understand it's way far from me, so that's not prudent. But again, to answer the public's, what are you doing about Pennsylvania? I like to answer, we know it's priority, it's a priority on our list, our CIP's got a priority on it, and, we put a little bit away for that, and just a little bit, but we're still keeping that as our priority. That's the only reason.
Okay, I'm in favor of $500,000 going to Pennsylvania.
I mean, that's my idea.
I would like to see a little more.
He said he was going.
I know, but I still think we need to throw in a little more.
So, because Mr. Hart's correct, we all know that it is distant, and when you're looking at it from an engineering point of view, Potrero's much closer.
But if you
But-
put too much away for Potrero, you can always move it over to Pennsylvania. So
Well,
I
and
would
that's
get the
another,
one- I
that's
would go
another
for the
way of
low-hanging
looking at it.
fruit.
So, that is true, you can move it over and bring it back. But, when you're looking at the part of the town here versus there, a lot of the public doesn't understand that, because this is where we're at, not over there, I'm okay, if you guys wanna put all into there, not all, but more money into that rather than Pennsylvania.
I would argue that the population is a lot greater closer to Potrero than it is Pennsylvania.
Have you gone to some of these town halls over here?
I understand, but if you go to Fairway Canyon, Termina Hills, Seneca Springs, everywhere on my side of town, Stetson, Solera, we're all gonna benefit from Potrero a lot more than we will Pennsylvania.
Well, what I don't wanna do is put the public in a division, where you've got some saying where you're focusing over there and not over here.
No, I'm just trying to help you with your public comments. You should
So,
get more public comments from the other side.
but I'm comfortable also knowing that we have the same vision. So we all know that Pennsylvania needs to be worked on.
Right.
So, and we know that, hey, if we do put it all over here with Potrero, we can move it. So I'm comfortable knowing that we're all on that page. I mean, if the council ever does come to a point of where that's, in jeopardy, then, I'd have a different look on that, so.
Right.
So you convince me, I don't know about you yet, but.
May I ask another question, throw another thing into the mix here? We did get $2 million for Second Street, correct?
Yes, that's 1.5 million we were able to get additional for
From
Second Street.
RCTC?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And so what is the status on Second Street? How does that money help? Does that put us over what we need? Are we gonna be
Yeah,
freeing up
we
money
expect it to
those
be,
months?
we expect it to be a little bit over what we need, so we could certainly, if that is the case and we get a contract underway, we could probably reprogram some of that diff to a different project if that's the route it goes. Engineering's complete, environmental's complete, there's some smaller regulatory permitting that we're trying to wrap up on Second Street, but we're hoping to advertise that here, as soon as 30 days.
Okay,
Early
and
summer.
and you have everything you need for Pennsylvania expansion?
Widening.
The widening?
Yes,
Yes, we're underway.
okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Question
Everyone
on the Second Street extension. So when we were in DC, we talked about some federal application money, I'll call it. It hasn't been guaranteed yet. Is that included in your numbers, or would that be in addition to?
Congressman Ruiz's support.
Yes, that's in, so the support we've already received from Congressman Ruiz and the funds, that's in the actual project budget now. These would be in addition to it.
Okay.
What are those earmarked for? I mean, Pennsylvania's not a federal project.
No, it was.
Con-
Pennsylvania.
Extension, the
Sec-
Second Street extension.
Right.
Second Street.
Second Street
Street
extension.
extension. Congressman
be-
Ruiz has requested $1 million, although it hasn't been
right.
formally approved.
Okay. Because I didn't think that they would approve money for local streets as opposed to grade separations that are more of a
Yeah.
federal issue.
Right, and it'd be the similar funding that we received actually for PIN about a year ago. when we
From
received funds. It was
Congressman
from-
Ruiz, the
yes.
1.5,
Okay.
1.4 that we received.
Any
But they
questions?
call it community benefit now, I believe.
Yeah, and, yeah, an earmark, no. Question on Potrero or?
Yeah, I think I was just gonna kind of cycle back around. I think when we're looking at priority level, goals here, we're hitting two of them that we have on our priority level one. So if we added some to Potrero and a small amount to Pennsylvania, I'd be good with that.
Mr. Hart?
So in that note, or on that note, excuse me, what I'm thinking is that if we have extra money from Second Street, that goes to the grade SEP. And anything that comes off of Potrero, if we have enough grants come through, then that also gets earmarked for Potrero. So that, in essence, the priority projects that we have, the grade SEP, Second Street extension, Potrero, all those monies basically stay within those priority projects. They're earmarked, so to speak. I'd be good with that.
And I like those two because we have more control.
Right, exactly.
On that, so.
And Mayor, you always have the option to direct us to bring back a CIP budget amendment after July 1st.
And what do we need to get, there's only one left on there that's partial funding. What do we need to get Sixth Street improvements?
So that's partially funded right now. We actually are bringing a contract award forward. We're going through the RFP is closed. We're going through the vetting process right now, and the subcommittee has to sign off on it. So you'll likely see the contract award for that. Actually, that's within my signing limit now.
But it's partially funded, so what's
Correct.
the gap? What
So-
more do you need to make it an F instead of a?
What's not funded is the entry monuments citywide, 6th Street, from Highland Springs to Illinois. Medians and entry monument is fully funded at 2 million. However, it's the rest that what council had talked about in the strategic planning workshop was all the other entryways into the city need monuments, and that's not. Jeff, do you even have a figure on what that would cost?
But we could do everything that is funded now and then maybe through the years add the additional monuments.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So the 6th Street median project we're going to award the contract for design. We'll get a cost estimate and then we'll bring that back, but right now there's 2 million in the CIP for that.
I was just gonna make a comment that, that with the majority of the funds set aside for Potrero, with some for the grade separation, because when we got going to DC and to Sacramento, and we got the attention of our legislators, to show them that it's still an urgent project and that we have the money set aside for it to show that we haven't lowered the priority for it, and I think it keeps their attention. And Congressman Ruiz has got his teeth in on the grade separation, and I want to keep that motivation high.
So, a couple of things I want to throw in. Comments? You're good.
I can wait.
Oh, I did, okay, is it on this one? Or
Yeah, I
is it
was
on
just
the
gonna
chart?
say, would $1 million get you guys to stop talking about grade stuff?
That'll work.
Would that work for you too? Okay.
And again, that can always be moved if we need it to, correct?
Correct.
All right. So going back to things that we have going now, so what I don't like is to start a project, build up the community, have a budget, and then find out that we're out of budget by the time we come to realization. So I refer to Stewart Park. So we know that Stewart Park is the main focus that we all are looking forward to, and we put a lot into this. We have a budget for it. So my question is it prudent to think about the idea of keeping some aside for that project to make sure we're getting what we want? And now the longer it's taking, of course, the more some of these numbers are gonna change on us. What I don't wanna do is come back and say we had to cut half of the park out because the expenses went over and blah, blah, blah. Not when we built it up this close. So is it prudent to think about taking some of this money and putting that aside for a project like that, or even the sports park, or anything like that? Because what I don't wanna do is spend all this stuff and then come back and find out that the stuff that we have on file now are gonna have to be modified. That would be a travesty. So, comments from staff on that?
So there's a little over 7 million programmed for Stewart right now.
So 7's pretty good.
And that has been built up through a series of CIP amendments. Until such time as we get to, I think we're almost to 60% design. Until such time as we get closer to the final design, a cost estimate is a moving target. So I'm comfortable with the little, it's 7.3, I believe, or 7.2 in the CIP that's already programmed and set aside for Stewart Park, and I'm comfortable with that right now until we finish design. And we're not.
The only concern I have with that is when we finish design, this money's spent already, so.
No. The 7.3.
Not the 7, I'm talking about the
Oh,
program.
I'm
The
sorry.
program we're talking about now, is that this is our one time to think ahead and kind of plan that, and not divvy it up and it's gone, and here we come up with 7 and find out it's 9 to get it done, and now we have to do that too. So that's my only concern. I'm trying to think ahead to make sure that we're compliant, getting things that we want done correctly. Because I know the cost overruns, I know the time's being delayed, you know, money's gonna go up, and it doesn't take much to use 7 pretty quickly.
But if,
Go ahead.
you
No,
go
no.
first. I've been on, you go ahead.
No, I agree, and I just thought we'd take it from Pennsylvania grade step if we needed to.
I was gonna
I
ask
can-
you about like a 10% contingency, but I didn't.
I'm sorry.
No, I agree, we want to do that, I just would like to know where our numbers are. And the other, along with parks though, we're gonna be doing that dog park for $1 million, right? The Palmer Park? Do we have money to improve the sports, the Nicholas Sports Field? Is that pulled out as well? Because I don't want to vacate the dog park or pull it out, improve the dog park, and then leave the existing park without any money as well, which is kind of along the Stewart Park lines.
Yeah.
So my question or suggestion was going to be that we have 7.3 from this year, about 6 from before, so we're at 13.3, right? Just, it doesn't,
Stewart?
numbers don't actually mean, minus $1 million, these guys are here.
And we haven't discussed this yet, but there is a settlement check that just arrived.
Yeah, let's not add more stuff right
Okay.
But couldn't we just say, of the 12.3s left, we'll move 5 million into the CIP to take care of Stewart Park, anything? I mean, we can always, like you said, you can come back and reprogram the CIP.
Well, and that, I would go for, again, I'm looking for just making sure we have that cushion, that's all.
So if we, I mean, we had problems trying to figure out what to do with the other 6 million last year. So I'm just suggesting if we take a number, and my number was just 5 million, put it in CIP for, I don't know if we want to call it a contingency fund, but basically
Yeah.
that's what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, especially for the ones that are already started or planning to be. That's what I worry about, because I just don't want to look at the public and tell them, we built up this and now we have to take half of it away. You know, especially when you have the opportunity now to save for that rate. That's all. Now, is anybody, okay with keeping just money left there as an unfunded balance? Or do you want to make sure that everything's allocated? 'Cause that was one of your options, just leave the balance unfunded and keep that, keep a number, we don't know what number, we haven't talked numbers yet, other than his one. Keeping something there, and we won't have to go all and spend it, we can put it where we want it, leave an unfunded balance, put it, 3 or 4, wherever you decide there, and then wait to see what else comes our way.
Kind of like wait after the sewer rates as well.
Yeah,
right?
and then we have that coming up. 'Cause I guess maybe I'm just over conservative, but I just trying to make sure that we don't all pay everything up front and then come back and then we're in a hole, or something's going on. I like to keep that flexibility, a little cushion. I don't know, this is me.
A question for staff. So in my prior experience, I have learned that when the state runs into financial trouble, they go looking for money. And when there are funds that are unassigned, that tends to be something that they are looking at. If we just put it in a CIP budget or whatever by itself, do we need to further earmark it to an individual project so it doesn't get touched? Okay, and so I like the idea of it, but then we just further identify, of the 5 million, 3's here, 2's there, 1's here, whatever, And not that I think the state's gonna fall apart anytime soon, but I hear their budget's not doing so well this year compared to last year. So, just planning ahead on that one.
So, can we now look at some of the priority level 2 goals that are partially funded? Create a park master plan would help us understand whether or not we can spend that money in those other parks that you're mentioning. So how do we get that fully funded? What do you need for that? I think Mr. Story is
Yeah,
eager
go
to
ahead.
get to the microphone.
I did. I came a little closer. I heard you talking about parks, so I just inched my way closer to the microphone. The Parks Master Plan, we did award that contract to RHA. So we are starting that process, and we have a contract. We budgeted $250,000 for that, and we have a contract with them already. So that process is beginning this month, actually. We're going to start, and we're going to start doing some community kickoffs and some surveys and all those things in the months ahead. So that process is beginning. As part of that, we will receive different feasibilities and studies and what needs to be improved as far as our park infrastructure, some concepts, things that we need to have so that when we come to these in the future meetings, we will have things to pull off our shelf and say, hey, we're estimated $4 million for Nicholas Park or whatever it may be.
Can you see funding that you would need next year?
For
And you
parks?
don't- For the master, let's start with just the master plan, then I figure, well, he's out of the room, we could ask the chief on the other one.
The master plan right now, it will take us through an 18-month process that is going to give us an immense amount of data back, and as far as plans and planning. There is a couple of things. When we awarded that contract, we asked them to sharpen their pencil on a couple of things. And so I think there's a couple of studies that as we get further down the line that we might want. They offer some things for standards for maintenance, different things like that, that we took out of this contract, but that we do have the option to get in the future. So there's a few things, but I think the $250, we're right about $250,000. We're going to be able to get a pretty comprehensive feasibility and park master plan.
So the study is fully funded?
Correct.
It's what the study produces?
Correct.
that's-
18 months, so that'll be
Correct.
next fiscal year.
Yes.
Can I
Yes.
ask you the same question regarding the plan to deploy recycled water?
That is still in the study stages on what the city and the water district and the Pass Water Agency want to do with the recycled water. And so that's partially funded only because the consultant has been hired and paid to do a facilitation study. The other, if we go back to the one-time funds, the recycled water environmental and the 1211 permit, that is part of the one-time funds, so that's funded. The only thing that's not funded is, are we gonna sell the water? Are we gonna put it in the ground? That requires infrastructure. So that hasn't been determined yet.
Okay. And we've talked a couple times about a study for and we'll have that discussion again with the fire truck, a logistics diff.
Correct.
So where are we on that? Is that coming in with the other studies that we have planned, a traffic study, or do we need to fund that separately?
The study is underway. Right now, we are meeting with legal because we have several legal determinations that need to be done. But the study's been fully funded.
So you don't need any money in the next fiscal year to bring to us numbers on a logistics diff fee?
So
Hi. So if council would like a formal study or a formal assessment done, staff from Public Works and Planning can work on, Public Works has a slew of on-call consultants, engineering firms that can prepare a study like that for us. It would take a dollar amount. We would probably have to get a quote from them on what that would take. I don't know if you have a ballpark to look at the main infrastructure projects that we have, whether it be Penn Grade Set, Potrero, Beaumont Avenue, and the 10, anything you as council would want looked at and included in that. We could have a separate analysis done as far as cost for individual project, and then a gross amount, I guess, that then we would look at to base the community benefit fee or whatever else we were looking to do.
Because my thought is that we have to get that in place before all of the projects that are coming through come through, correct? I mean, we want to be able to to impose that fee on future logistics developments.
So like City Manager Gibbs said, there's a couple different ways we could go about this, and this is why we're vetting it with legal, because we could tie the fee from a nexus standpoint through a true study and assign a dollar amount and then use that. But with that comes the challenges of looking at what's already identified in under development impact fees, and then being careful that we don't double dip. And so that's where the formal study comes in, as opposed to the other option where we have the opportunity to negotiate a community benefit agreement as a little subsidiary part of a development agreement, which is entered into cooperatively by both the developer and the city. And then it becomes more of a tool for negotiation on a dollar amount that we could use for whatever benefit council would see fit, as opposed to tying the fee specifically to a nexus study that would have to be prepared separately.
And one last question, I'll turn this off then. Same question for road and bridge district study. I mean, if we could establish a road and bridge district, we could also look for transportation infrastructure money from there, correct? And what do we need to do something like that? Give us more options besides just the logistics.
Yeah.
that's a question for legal because we already have a road and bridge diff. And so we want to make sure that we don't violate the double dipping.
Understood.
Yeah.
That road and bridge diff is for all developers or just some types of developers?
It goes, if it's diff, it's for
Everybody.
all. Yeah.
Residential, commercial, industrial, everything.
And we will be updating the diff fees. We have to do a diff study that will kick off this fiscal year sometime?
Yeah,
24,
we're getting the
25?
RFP ready now, but it's in the funding for, proposed
The
funding for fiscal year '24.
The last diff was done 6 years ago, so we need to update that.
So I'd be okay with setting $1 million aside for a road and bridge and a diff study. The reason I think it's important to do, or to get a nexus study for the diff is if you're negotiating fees as opposed to having a nexus that drives the fee, any downturn in the economy, the developer's gonna say, you know what, I can't afford to do that. Rather than if you have a diff that's already set by nexus, then there's no negotiating other than can you phase it in and stuff like that. And so, but at least if we earmark study money, set aside for those, because I do believe that those are important in picking up future capital improvement projects. That's just a thought.
So let me kind of put, so I hear $1 million for future studies. And then I heard $1 million for, Potrero / Pennsylvania, is that true, or is that just one or the other?
They're just Pennsylvania based.
Okay, so one for that, and then what did we say for Potrero?
I think we wait until we have to make that decision.
Okay, so nothing on that. How
We
about,
have more information.
how about for the parks? Anything earmarked for that?
Well, it looks like we don't need any money on the master plan until next fiscal year.
Okay, so I've got 7.3 minus 2, so we're at 5.3. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, but you're not counting the 6 that we haven't spent from last year.
No, I don't count that. I'm just looking at the 7.3 that we have in front of us right now from the assigned.
Is there anything that we're forgetting? Where are we on the police station expansion? Funding wise?
Or the study, because I think we were gonna
Studies,
redo
funding, all that kind of stuff.
We will need more funding towards that once we hire a consultant. So let me back up. On Tuesday's agenda, we have a capital project program manager firm that I will be proposing, and I will be proposing $1 million to hire a firm or two, which are engineers, like a concierge service, and they're going to draft scopes and carry these CIP projects forward to support Jeff and his team. That does need $1 million, and I will be asking for that on Tuesday. From there, that firm is going to look at a P3, a public-private partnership to build the police station. We are looking at land in downtown, and that will be one of their first tasks in that scope, is to find adequate land in downtown and then build the police station from there through a public-private partnership. But for now, if you're looking to program more money, I will be asking for $1 million on Tuesday.
Is that million programmed in ongoing then? That's the request. I didn't see that in the enhancements, so. For
That's
this,
what she's gonna ask for next week, but she's saying if we wanna deal with that now, we can, right?
Yeah, the majority of it will be spent next year. It'll be presented as a budget adjustment on Tuesday for this fiscal year. I haven't seen the staff report yet.
So not 23, 24.
No.
If I can chime in on the money for the studies, not often you'll hear staff say that's too much money, but in reality, for this upcoming fiscal year, 500,000 would be plenty if we wanted to be conservative. Probably for the fiscal year, 250 would be enough for us to get these studies going and fund them. So I'll leave that with you
So
to,
you're saying if we decided to put 500,000 towards
the studies would
studies
be,
in general?
that would be plenty for the fiscal year, yes.
I would also recommend that we do earmark money for that police station. It's gonna be upwards of $40 to $50 million if we build it ourselves and we don't go through a P3.
Do we have any guesstimates, and if it's a new location, of what we might be spending just for the land cost to start?
I don't have that yet.
How many acres do we know?
Do we have?
Do we have any idea of how many acres it would, a minimum would be?
5 to 6 acres.
Want to do another million there?
We need to start putting that there. This would be a good time to do that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, this is one of those things that can move depending on,
Right.
you know, what happens and what numbers we get and whether, you know, all that stuff. But I think it's proactive, thinking now ahead and setting that up. In my opinion, I think it's a good idea.
So what if we did 300 towards the study? Then let's just look at the 7. And then,
Oh, I see that's a good idea.
yeah, so, because she's saying 250 would probably cover us. So if we did 300 for the study versus the 500, now we have 7 we're looking at. You said 1 for,
Pennsylvania and one for the police station. Is that correct?
or multiple towards the police station.
Well, not yet.
That's enough for both studies, road and bridge and the diff?
Yeah, for the fiscal year, I
Okay.
think that would be plenty, yeah.
We still have to discuss, and I think it's on the next agenda, the fire truck. Is
Right.
that gonna be all funded out of fiscal year 23? Do we need to look at that? I mean, even if we go with the chief's dream wish list, do we need money from 23, 24?
Is it pay on?
1.8's already been funded, so if council approves the fire truck as presented at the last meeting, you would need to program another
Okay, but
700,000.
we can do that we can give you direction on Tuesday for that.
So I have no problem leaving 5 right now open
I'm good with that.
until we can.
Unless there's something we're forgetting.
Well, I don't wanna force it, so I wanna, you know, make good decisions based on what we need.
Right.
Get time to think about it.
The-
And have time to sharpen your pencil.
The million you're gonna ask for on Tuesday, is that in the enhancements that we have here, or is
That's
it?
what I asked.
Oh, that's another million.
Which million? Sorry.
The million that you're asking for the,
It's actually gonna be a budget adjustment, so it'll be paid for out of this.
It's gonna be 23 budget.
Yeah.
but it's not gonna be ongoing, I think is the question. So we're not gonna need to carry it for,
No,
No.
no.
okay.
Yeah, okay. We have enough money for the design standards, right? Okay, just making sure.
That was funded this year, thank you.
So on the fire truck, if possible, if this makes sense to council, can we get estimates for like a 75-foot ladder truck and a 100-foot ladder truck, plus we have the one that for the, what do they call it, BTA or
TDA.
TDA.
But you're talking about 100-foot without the TDA
Right.
portion of it.
Just a regular,
For our discussion on Tuesday.
for our discussion on Tuesday?
I'll do my best to get those quotes.
I don't know if it's, well, we can try, because we're already pushing it to get a formal one for that, so.
I did receive, Thursday, I received an updated confirmation from the company that quoted the county fire apparatus services. They're out of Rialto. But I did email him. I have several questions, and he's supposed to get back to me tomorrow.
I would just kind of like to know what,
I mean, it always gives us options, but just yeah, I'll leave it for that discussion, so. All right, so,
Can I ask, so all of the enhancements that were presented and all of the capital projects that were presented,
we're
are there
good
any
with.
questions, or are we good with those?
No, so according to this, you had 4.2 in enhancement requests. And then we didn't have any discussion but we didn't have any issues with those. And then we had the 187.59 for wastewater that we said we were good with. And does anybody have any questions based on those things again? Not the 7.
That 7.3 was based on us approving all of those other ones that you brought forward, correct? Yes.
Right, yeah, that's where because it came out of 15.7, right?
It's a good problem to have.
Well, and I don't wanna, I wanna make sure that we're good discussion. This was a great discussion.
Yeah,
I think
no.
it'll give us time to think and the departments to think and, I don't wanna rush anywhere. There's no reason for it.
We did receive another sales tax update today, and the public sheet will be in your packet on the 16th. Fourth quarter 2021 to fourth quarter 2022 was flat, no increase, about 3%. Yeah, so you'll be able to see what's dipping and what's going up.
Do we still have 2 canines? One of them didn't retire, did they?
One of them will retire June 20th.
Do we need, are we gonna fund another? Is that already in the
It's already
budget?
underway, yeah. Yeah, we have current funds this year to purchase the dog, and I think we're in the honeymoon phase right now. Oh, he gets picked up tomorrow,
Oh,
yeah.
I've got a question on the wastewater.
Anything,
Is that right?
we're open, so.
So on the, in section 8, under permits, and I'm assuming permits is where you have the tie-ins to the lateral from businesses or developers. We had actual activity of 3,525 in 21-22, and we have 0 budgeted and 0 total activity. 22-23, is that correct? And then 24 or 23-24. Wouldn't permit activity be the permits for lateral tie-in, or is that different?
That was activity for, I believe that was inspection activity. That was for maybe a special project. I'd have to go back and double check on that.
So we don't do those inspections anymore?
It's not on every one, no.
So does that money,
This was specific to, I believe, one of the juice place, I think. I'll have to go back and double check on that. Yes.
oh, okay, I got it, thank you.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Well, that was my question, I was gonna ask if you've had enough direction, you feel comfortable, I feel comfortable, and then you have other questions, so please do.
So
I
before
moved-
you adjourn, we'll bring the public hearing back June 6th.
Yeah, and then yeah. I'm good.
So I move to adjourn.
All right, I'll second that motion, we're adjourning at 7:16 PM.